So I'm going to go pretty quickly through examples related to these 10 ideas. And don't worry, this list is going to show up a lot, so don't write them all down. The first one, and we've been talking about this somewhat, is to think about relationships instead of technologies. And this is both, I think, so that you can design well, but it's also so that you can speak well in your organization in terms of defending your ideas. The question you should be asking is not what technology do we want to use, but what kind of relationship do we want to have with our visitors? And I think there are many valid answers to this. And I think that if you're not honest with yourself about what the answer is, you're not going to be able to design something that really is going to be comfortable for everybody involved, both the organization and your audience whom you're working with. And I want to show you these two examples that are very different relationships with audiences. The first on the left is a video. It's on YouTube, and it's put out by the Ontario Science Centre in Toronto in Canada. Phenomenally successful. You can see there's over 1 million views of this video. It's of an astronaut named Chris Hadfield, a Canadian astronaut, talking about what it's like to go to the bathroom in space. And so as you can imagine, a lot of the comments, a lot of those 1,700 comments are about going to the bathroom on space or otherwise. But this is a really interesting example where the museum had a program where Chris Hadfield came. He spoke to an audience of about this many, about 200, 300 people. And that was going to be the whole event. But because they videotaped the event, they were able to take some interesting clips from it and put it out on YouTube and spread it to a much wider audience of over 1 million people. So this is an example of using these tools to have a relationship with a wider audience, people who are not necessarily coming to your institution, and to let people discuss that content in a much more free way than they could do at the program itself. One of the positive outcomes of this is a lot of the comments had to do with the fact that people didn't know that Canada had a space agency. And so it's not just that they got their content out there, but they got some conversations started that they did not initiate that were really core to their mission about raising public awareness of science in Canada. The example on the right is very different. It's from the London Science Museum. And it's from an exhibition they did called Playing with Science. It's an exhibition of toys. And what they did for this exhibition is they had some vitrines, some cases at in the exhibition that were empty. And they invited people on certain days during the show that was running to bring in their own toys, to tell the story associated with that toy, and to lend it to the museum. So here's a picture of a guy who lent his toy to the museum, and the little label that went with it in the exhibition. So while the first one was about pushing out content the museum already had to a wider audience, this is about pulling in visitors who are already at your site, their experiences, and putting those on display with the rest of your exhibition. I'm not saying that either of these is better than each other. They're very different. And there are some museums that might feel entirely comfortable with one of them and not with the other, and I think that's fine. I think that the question is, do you want to be having conversations with your visitors? Do you want to have their stories or their content in your exhibitions? Do you want to be spreading yourself into the cultural landscape on the web? These are all different strategic questions that you can answer, and answering by saying, well, we want to do all of it is probably not going to get you very far, at least not in the beginning. Next thing I want to talk about is listening. One of the best ways to start finding out what's going on in Web 2.0 is to find out where you are. These are 3 services, How Sociable, Google Alerts, and Technorati, that you can use to sort of surf the the social media web and see what's going on. And let's see if I can find this other, great. So earlier today, I went to howsociable.com and I put in the Tropen Museum. And I then get this list, and it is somewhat US focused. Some of these services, like Upcoming, are only in the US, but it's just one of many tools you can do to check out these kinds of things. And you can see where you live in all these places. Oh, there are a lot of pictures on Flickr, 838 related to the Tropen Museum. Vimeo, that's interesting. There are only 2 videos there, but you got a pretty high score related to that because I guess there must be a lot of people checking them out. And so, for example, I took this Technorati one, I clicked on this and opened this one, and it's showing me all of the Technorati results, so blog posts that in some way related to the Tropen Museum. And actually, this first one, I read it. It's quite interesting. it's a very interesting article about the idea that this person had such a powerful experience in the voodoo exhibit and was so sort of uncomfortable that maybe there was going to be this spiritual thing happening that, that he wrote this very interesting piece. Now, I'm not doing this at all to embarrass the Tropen Museum or anybody else. The point is that there are conversations happening about you already out on the web, and you don't even need to be part of those conversations. You could just see where they are and sort of say to yourself, oh, that's interesting. I see that a lot of people are interested in this. Or maybe, maybe you feel compelled at some point to comment on a conversation or on a blog post. And it can give you an idea of where in the landscape you are. It can also give you an idea strategically of where you might want to go. Some people might say, oh, we're really not represented in X place, so we want to be there more. Others might say, oh, there's already community going on around us in this place, let's go there. So I think there are different ways to use this kind of information. The other thing you should think about is what kind of visitors you have in terms of when you're thinking about structuring what kinds of relationship experience you're going to create. This is pulled from a website, and I have the link for you. It's a tool that unfortunately is not very specific to Europe in particular, but there are different countries, age ranges, and genders you can look at, and you can look at what kinds of participation these people are using on the social web. So it's interesting that this general shape is shown true pretty much across the world, but you may find that specifically if you're really trying to target, for example, 18 to 35-year-olds, or maybe you're trying to target 45 to 55-year-olds, that you may want to look at some of these things and think about what kinds of activities are going to be comfortable for the kinds of people who we're already attracting or who we're trying to attract. The next important thing, don't start with a huge project that will take you 8 months to plan and take everybody on your advisory board to say yes to. Start with something small that you feel like you can do with yourself. I don't want to spend too much time on this slide, but the point of it, and there's a blog post associated with it that has a lot of information, but the point is that there are lots of different levels at which you can engage with social media, and you don't need a full-time person for it. It doesn't have to take over your life. And things like looking at things like Technorati, just following what's going on there, what's out there, can only take a few minutes a day if you're doing Google Alerts or something to see what other people are saying. And you can step sort of up the ladder as you want, or you can say, you know what? We have a lot of content that we're already videotaping. We're going to make a video podcast. The first museum Web 2.0 project I ever did was a podcast at the Spy Museum. We did a monthly podcast. It's very successful on iTunes, and it takes about 3 person-hours a month. So that was a project where we said, you know what? This is something we can do. We know we have the content. We had a director who was a fascinating ex-CIA guy, and he was a great speaker, so he was a perfect person to get involved in this, and he was happy to give an hour a month to it. So I think there are lots of ways that you can do this. Now, the other side of this is that you may be in an institution that is so far from doing any technology stuff that it's hard for you to even imagine where to start. And this is a picture from a museum in Utah that doesn't exist anymore because they built a much bigger facility. There are a lot of US museums that are undergoing these huge additions or moves right now. And this was a museum that was on the campus of a university. I think it had about 1,000 visitors a year, very small. And they were building this huge facility. They were going to go off campus, become this public place with a projected, I think, 500,000 people a year visitation. So entirely changing what their institution was. And so they said, well, we want to do stuff with technology, but we don't do it at all here, and we have no idea how we can plan wisely for the new facility given what we have right now. So they did things that were simple enough that they could start with. So this is an example. You see this guy's videotaping these people. They wanted to see if it might be interesting for them to do a project where visitors could make videos sharing their favorite part of the collection. So as they would go through the museum, maybe there would be video kiosks in the new facility where you could register your opinion. And so what they did to test this is they had visitors, of their 1,000 visitors, and they took camcorders and they filmed visitors, and then they put it on a TV in the lobby. So they used a technology that was comfortable for them. And I would say that whenever I work with museums on this kind of stuff, We always start by making things with paper, with stickers. You know, Post-it notes are a fabulous participatory social technology, and they're very cheap. And I'm not saying that you have to finish at the Post-it level or finish at the camcorder level, because some of this can be very inefficient. But it's a great place to start if you're not comfortable using the tools already.